Last week, we talked about the consolidation in the gold space and the juniors. We asked if it was over. It appears that is the case. We'll go over the election, the reactions, some outcomes, some consequences, what it means for the country, what it means for your money. We'll talk about who won. We'll talk about who apparently lost. And we'll talk about some Bitcoin. A lot to get to. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. This is episode 93 of Bizarro World. Nick, before I ask you how you are, I have to admit, I did not know if we were going to be able to pull today's podcast off.
Why is that?
Because my president told me that if it appeared Biden was going to win, there would be no electricity, there will be no heat, winter would be here. And then I thought, well, I still have electricity and I still have heat. And it does appear Mr. Biden is on his way to a victory. And then I thought, well, now I can go outside because my president, Trump, told me that there would be a vaccine ready by November the 3rd. But I checked my mailbox and I didn't get the vaccine. Did you?
I got no vaccine either.
Man. And then I looked and I said, well, look, I shouldn't be selfish. I'm sure everybody's happy that they got their follow-up stimulus payment that my President Trump had been promising everybody. But I checked with some people that were eligible for that, and they didn't get that either. Do you know of anyone that received their stimulus?
Not in the form you're talking about.
Wow, bummer. All right. Well, anyway, how are you doing, Nick? How was your week?
I have been thoroughly entertained. Popcorn is at the ready, and if you know me, which you do, this is my daily soap, so it's been pretty good.
So let's start by trying to, let's start with an overview. It appears that it is clear, at least to me, that Mr. Biden, who as of right now, and this is Friday, 3:30 Austin time, 1:30 Washington State time, it appears that Mr. Biden will handily take Georgia, or Pennsylvania, I should say. He's ahead in Georgia. That looks good as well. But the bottom line is nothing else really matters other than Pennsylvania. If he wins Pennsylvania, he gets past 270 and he is your next president. Has anything surprised you this week?
Lots of things I think have surprised me. I was surprised that it was as close as it was. You and I talked for a couple of reasons, I guess. And I'm no election expert, but you and I both said that we thought Mr. Trump was going to win the election. We thought the polls were wrong as they were in 2016. And we talked a lot about the enthusiasm that Mr. Trump seemingly had behind him that Mr. Biden lacked. And so I guess I'm surprised in the outcome. I really did think that Trump was going to win, and I didn't think it was going to be this close. So it's a surprise. Yes, of course. Other surprising things are Georgia being tentatively blue. The dialogue now is all about Stacey Abrams and what she's been able to do in Georgia. Arizona went blue. As well, the ghost of John McCain, the soldier who got captured, who Mr. Trump doesn't like because that showed weakness, right, coming back to haunt him. And so there were lots of surprises. I'm surprised it's taken this long to get an answer, to be frank. I mean, the election was days ago. How long does it take to count the ballots? I think that was a bit of a surprise. And so I'm with you. I mean, at this point, I think when people listen to this podcast, Biden will have claimed victory and been declared the victor. I'm surprised, if you want me to keep going.
Absolutely. I want you to keep going.
at how much people think this actually matters for policy and their pocketbook. And I'm surprised that after being let down by Obama, that this generation still thinks there's hope for this class of politicians. And frankly, I'm surprised that people get this worked up about elections and partisan politics. I mean, I saw friends of mine getting bent out of shape, certainly on both sides, and in fact, getting dressed up in garb. One gentleman I went to high school with wore a shirt to go vote and then subsequently posted it on social media that said, "Not today, Biden." And so, I just, those are most of my surprises, I guess. But how about you? What are you thinking about?
What do I think? I think electorally, when all the votes are counted, and let me say this, whether you voted for Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden, that's that's our democracy, our experiment with democracy, our attempt at it. It's one of, voting is one of our most sacred institutions. Every vote should be counted, no matter who you voted for. If you feel that every vote should not be counted, you're an asshole. This goes for people on the left and it goes for people on the right and people like me that are in between. We count votes in America. That's just how it goes. And you don't get to have it both ways when it comes to voting, right? So let me just get that out of the way. And so, surprises. I actually have been surprised about the electoral dominance. I have to put it that way if the numbers hold up. I mean, Nevada, Arizona, if it holds, Georgia, if it holds, Pennsylvania, which looks clearly like it's going to hold. I mean, by the time the votes are tallied up, there's a chance that Biden gets to 300 electoral votes. Did not see that in the cards. Absolutely did not see that in the cards. I'm also surprised, as you were, by the turnout. I'm encouraged by the turnout from both sides, the Republican and the Democrat side. I like that people went to the polls and people mailed in their ballots.
Mailed in. Let's talk. Yeah, that's an important point. Not necessarily went to the polls, but people for the first time were seeing the possibility of mail-in, which, it's weird. And not to cut you off, sorry, I'll get back to you in a second. Some states like Oregon have been voting by mail for 20 years. And so some East Coast states to think that was weird or to think it could be manipulated or it's not viable, that was just a whole weird sort of side issue to me.
Absolutely.
But anyway, it should be more encouraged, I guess, was my point. And I'm even for online voting, but that's a whole nother topic. But yes, the turnout was awesome.
The turnout was incredible from both sides. I agree with you. And we joked off air briefly before I said, no, let's save it for the podcast. That, it is incredible to me that people really are this invested into the result. I understand it's important. I'm invested in the result. For different reasons. But as far as change goes, structural, fundamental change in this country, this isn't going to provide that. And we'll know soon. If Mr. Biden, again, surprises me, comes in and says, Pelosi and Schumer, you guys are out of here. You guys aren't leading the party anymore. It's time to move over. And Mr. Biden acts as a bridge for that fourth turning, the new batch of ideas from the new, young, energized Democrats and libertarians, I will be extremely encouraged about the next 4 years. And we'll get to the stock market in a minute and the implications there with taxes and how that looks. But just societally, generationally, if that's what happens, I'll be encouraged. I'll be surprised. I'll tip my hat to the man and I'll say, good on you. I do not think that will be the case. Power just doesn't, seed power, it just doesn't happen that way. It doesn't do so willingly. It must be taken. And so I'm really curious to see what the young guns in the Democratic Party have to say over the next couple of months as Mr. Biden prepares, his cabinet and his staff and who's going to be Speaker of the House and all of that. That will be very, very, very interesting to me. I also want to take 2 seconds to say fuck you to Mr. Trump's kids with the exception of Ivanka. Eric and Don Jr., you're some crying babies, man. And you know what? I've made mistakes in life. You've made mistakes in life, Nick. My kids have made mistakes in life. We all make mistakes. But I actually believe that the videos that they are retweeting and the conspiracy theories that they're pushing, I actually believe they know better. It's why I get so frustrated with a guy like Ted Cruz, because there's a difference between being an idiot and being manipulative. And to be sure, there's manipulation on both sides, but one side, apparently, the right, and again, these are the president's children. These are people that are close to the administration, have been peddling for the past 3 days just straight up Looney Tunes conspiracy theories that are meant to incite everyday Americans to turn on each other while they sit back in their self-built wall, which is the most ironic thing in the world to me, that Donald Trump is behind a wall that he built himself in front of the White House, a non-scalable wall is how they put it. And guess what, Donnie? Ain't nobody trying to scale your wall. They're going to get your ass out of there one way or the other. Nobody's rushing to get you. Nobody cares about you. I find that ironic. But yeah, a big fuck you to Eric and Don Jr. They know better. I know they know better. They're I don't agree with a lot of their positions, but I know they're not, they're not ignorant to the extent of the stuff that they're pushing around. And I don't like division being sown unnecessarily. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They are trying to incite, and Mr. Steve Bannon, you can get a fuck you too. They're trying to incite violence between Americans. And you know what? It's a little different if you're actually going to participate in the fighting and the shooting. But when I know you're not, you're going to be in your penthouse, mansion, sitting back, just watching it all on TV with your security. That's disheartening, and it angers me a little bit, to be frank.
Oh, they certainly know better. I'm still thinking about you using young and energized in the same sentence with Joe Biden.
Incredible. But again, he got the vote out. I was surprised. And look, you can disagree the way that I do with some of his proposals. And I disagree with some of Mr. Trump's proposals. And, politicians are politicians. It's not like they're my favorite types of people in the world. But I do think there's the potential, if he uses the momentum he has, for an energized discussion within the Democratic Party. It won't look like this in 4 years, Nick. I can promise you that.
I'm interested, like you, to see how it plays out. You were saying you're interested to see if, he can bridge the gap to that younger part of the party. We'll have to see. I mean, if this was the fourth turning, it's been a little light on the violence, to be honest. I know it was a crazy summer, but and not just the violence, the bottoming of economic cycles and other things that we haven't quite seen yet. What I think is that Joe Biden presides over the bottoming, basically, of a generational cycle. And so we'll see what we get next. But you're right. I mean, all we can do is wait and see how he steps up to fill that role. And well, that's what it's all about. That's what we're here to do.
I will say this, as far as, the violence and the lack of it thus far, which is great to see. I don't want to see Americans shooting Americans, stabbing Americans while the elites are sitting again behind their penthouse walls, having cocktails together, laughing about, the whole thing. So that's a good thing. But I will say this, I'll caution that there's still a formal decision to be made. And I'll caution that there's still the reaction from the president. And I don't underestimate, the radicalized part of his base, and the potential there. And so, yeah, it'll be the next week is going to be interesting, but I don't look at this and what's happened so far and say, oh, that went well, because I'm pretty sure it's not completely over, the volatility, right? I'll give you an example. I live just outside of Austin. Austin is a very liberal city. Texas is a very conservative state, as everyone knows. I live in a suburb just outside, 15 minutes outside of downtown Austin, that tends to lean more on the conservative side of it. And, we had friends invite us to the town square. And I said, you know what, with the election, I don't want to be out in the town square right now, for the simple fact that I don't want to hear, I want to avoid the potential for something or someone to say something to someone else and something escalates and be in the middle of that, because it is still kind of delicate. I don't think I don't think we should call it game over on the lack of violence or lack of volatility. Once it's formally announced that he's lost, whether or not he concedes or not, I think that's when we'll really see the if anything happens, and I hope nothing happens. That's when it's going to happen, I think.
And what's going to happen with the ardent Trump supporters? You know them, and I know them. The MAGA folks. We're going to be poor if Biden gets elected, folks. The driving around with flags in the back of their pickup truck, folks. So what's going to happen to those folks?
They'll still be able to buy guns legally. No one's going to take them. They're still going to get a stimulus check as soon as they agree to one, because, more stimulus is coming. Life will go on, guys. And guess what? Even if Donald Trump had one, life would go on. Yes, it would go on differently. There are some clear differences between the two parties in regards to, LGBTQ rights and immigration. There's clear differences there. But again, there isn't going to be this drastic change in policy. It's just not who Joe Biden is. I'm counting on the platform, the Democratic platform. I'm counting on that platform to enable new, young, better ideas. And on the right and in the Libertarian Party, I'm counting on if Biden does run up the score and gets near 300 electoral votes, I'm counting on the right to kick, the career politicians that have been doing the same way. Trump is right in a sense about, Joe Biden being in office for 46 years. And, it was Obama that built the cages and enabled the Trump administration to bring in somebody like Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon and create and be the architects of this very abusive and hostile immigration policy without putting forth any kind of comprehensive immigration policy. It was the Obama administration that lied about pushing that through. They pivoted to healthcare and they tried to get along with Republicans for 2 years and did absolutely nothing. So I am hoping that on both sides and on the libertarian side of it, and we'll talk libertarians in a minute, that there is real change and dissension. I want to see the AOCs continue to challenge the Nancy Pelosi's and say, you don't get it. I want to see the people on the right challenge McConnell and say, you don't get it. It's why you lost. I want to see, the Marco Rubios of the world start getting pushed out of the party. You had your chance. You were young. You had a large following. You still have a lot of support. And all you've done is kissed ass for 4 years. You haven't done anything innovative. I hope there's young Republicans listening that say, I am a young Republican, but that doesn't represent what my party should look like. And I hope on the left, it's the exact same thing. And by God, I hope libertarians get it together.
That was a poor showing for organizational campaign fronts.
Nick, not only was it a poor showing, this is our time to shine. Listen, you have a president who wants you to stop counting in one state and keep counting in the other. And somehow this guy has mobilized his base to argue both positions. And I haven't heard, with the exception of Justin, we're on a first name basis with Justin. He's been great, right? He's been fantastic the whole way through, even primaries, the whole thing. Outside of him, I haven't heard any of the so-called libertarians speak about, the sacredness of the right to vote and counting every vote and everything that comes with that. There's so many attacks on the traditional institution that in a lot of senses I disagree with, but you don't go after the vote, and I haven't seen them speak up against it. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I'm not, I try to get my news from different sources and have friends across all political, spectrums there. And I just haven't seen it. I haven't seen the outrage that I would imagine the Libertarian Party would have given the circumstances right now. Have you seen it?
I have not seen it. And I'll say a couple of things. It outrages me as a libertarian. Yep. Of course, I think every vote should count for all sides as long as it was cast legally. I'd also say that I'm not sure who the prominent libertarians are. I mean, does anyone even know who Joe Jorgensen is? We got, Gary Johnson, of course, but the libertarianism as a philosophy is one thing, but libertarianism as a party is something else. And the latter, I'm not sure what's going on with it. I'm not involved with it really on a party front. I'm more of a libertarian in philosophy, right? I vote across
Correct.
the ballot and for Republicans and Democrats,
Yep.
depending on the office and what their viewpoints and policies and ideas are. And so, another thing is that I think libertarianism has sort of been given a bad name in the past, couple of years, but certainly this year, and that has been usurped a little bit by the Trump administration and some of his supporters as far as the militias and things are concerned, which we've seen in Michigan and elsewhere, right? And so I've said a couple times, I see these counter protesters out there that are in support of the police or that go to support the police, just like the kid in Wisconsin, right? That are going to support the state suppression of peaceful protest while simultaneously flying "Don't Tread on Me" flags. And it makes my brains want to implode. And I don't know if you followed me there, but the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, the "Don't Tread on Me" flag doesn't mean you go and support your government as they tried to suppress other people. That's not what that's about. And so, I think I'm not sure if libertarian is lost, but I think libertarianism has been a bit usurped, and that has put just a cloud over it. I mean, that's just what I think.
It was a colossal missed opportunity, and it continues to be. And continues to be. I felt like the party and the practice of the philosophy really had an opportunity to shine, and has. For weeks on end. And you know what? There's still a weekend left. There's still a formal announcement to be had. There's still the reaction to that. But yes, my brain implodes as well when I see people support police brutality on citizens, unwarranted police brutality, and wave "Don't Tread on Me" flags. I don't.
And it's not an uncommon thing. I mean, you live in Texas. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but here in Eastern Washington, I mean, Spokane voted for President Trump. It was not uncommon here to see either on a vehicle or on the side of someone's barn or shop, both a "Don't Tread on Me" flag and a Trump flag and or a thin blue line flag. It was a very common thing. And to me, it just, someone's getting something wrong there.
Agreed. No, I have, as we have a home nearby the home and that's in a rural area. It's 15, 20 minutes away from the little suburban area that I live in just outside of Austin. But that's country, neighbors on all sides, big Trump flags everywhere, "Don't Tread on Me" flags everywhere. And no, I did see, a lot of that mixing of the philosophies, which is really interesting. Back to personalizing the election a little bit, I'll share something here in Williamson County, which is the county that I live in. We had a sheriff, Robert Chody, who made himself famous here the past several years with his participation in a show called Live PD. He's somebody that, my brother-in-law's parents, when they come to visit, they're like, "Oh, do you know Robert Chody? And this is the county he's from." So, he was somewhat of a local celebrity. And there were a lot of things within his department that really, really were improper. Officers allowed to make racist posts, sexist posts about rape without any kind of disciplinary follow-ups. There were a couple of cases where excessive force was used when the cameras were rolling and people died. There's a gentleman by the name of Javier Ambler from 2 years ago. Anyhow, long story short, that once upon a time very popular sheriff was up for re-election. He was indicted a month ago by the Republican DA here in Williamson County. And a former sheriff who now ran as a Democrat, Mr. Gleason, won handily over Robert Chody as a Democratic candidate. It was encouraging for me to see that my rural neighbors with very right-leaning, political beliefs, very vocal right-leaning political beliefs, saw through the corruption and said, no, that's not how we want our local police force to be trained and disciplined. We actually do believe in law and order, and we're going to prove it by voting out the Republican sheriff, voting in a new Democratic sheriff, And yes, we'll vote Republican, the rest of the ticket on down, which is what I'm sure most of them did. But it was interesting to drive through, when we go out there and it's farms and barns and all of that, and see Trump, Pence, every Republican banner that you could possibly have, and dead smack in the middle of it, see a Gleason for sheriff banner. It actually encouraged me a bit to think, all right, cool. They gave this some thought. They aren't with the corruption. And when it matters, and it really matters locally, because it's a relatively small county. It's not a city, by any means. Small cities. It brought out the vote, and the right person won, I think. And so, anyhow, who really won during this election, Nick?
Psychedelic mushrooms
and marijuana. You got it. A little cocaine is in there. They got a little action. Some of the stuff that I'm not running out to Oregon to do oxys or heroin or cocaine, because I don't do oxys or heroin or cocaine because they're not legal. I do them because they're not good for you, right? I don't do them because they're not good for you. Making it legal won't make me do them. But there were several states, I believe 5, that either decriminalized or made legal the use of marijuana. I thought that was a move in the right direction as far as policy goes. Now, I'm not advocating that everybody go out and get high all of a sudden. You do what is best for you, but you should have the right to do that without fear of ending up, in prison, right? And so I thought that was a move in the right direction. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, Mr. Hodge.
It's a very libertarian cause, Gerardo.
Indeed.
No, it was good to see the stocks are up in step with that news, and actually, up more now that it looks like Biden is going to win, to give that perhaps some federal backing as well, not just the states. There's multiple things to talk about. You got to mention Portugal, I think, which has done for a number of years what Oregon has just now done in legalizing even the hard stuff and directing, the funds towards rehabilitation instead of criminalization. And I believe that's a step in the right direction. I think Portugal has proven that. And we'll see in time here with Oregon, which was also one of the first states to legalize cannabis. Gosh, that was, I don't even know, Gerardo, that might have been 6 years ago at this point, a while ago. And so it's no surprise that they were the first ones to do it here. As far as the market is concerned, and we've talked about this on one or more of our 90-some podcasts at this point, is cannabis is going to be due for another round of outsized investment returns as well, because we had the first boom and bust. The sector's now been shaken out. It's consolidated. The bad players have started to disappear. The debts have been reorganized. The oversupply is starting to be dealt with. And really, you needed the United States to have some sort of wave of legalization, because 30 or 40 million Canadians aren't going to get it done, right? So you need that 300 plus million people in the U.S. to drive that market. And I think that's what's coming. If you look at any of the charts from Afria to Aurora to, some of the other big ones, they are just now starting to see the ever slightest tick higher after a long bottoming process. So-called wave surfers like Mr. Dines, right, are starting to re-engage in the cannabis sector and have been looking for recommendations to make there. And the psychedelic stocks are doing what the cannabis stocks were doing in 2015 and 2016. I mean, they're just absolutely ripping higher. And so the promotions are coming out fast and furious for those. And it's good to see, not just as a libertarian and as an investor, but I think it's just the right direction in general, as far as at least for marijuana being a plant and mushrooms being a fungi, as opposed to this multi-hundred billion or trillion-dollar drug industry and related lobbying efforts and some of the negative results and consequences of that, as far as high drug prices and on one end, and addiction on the other side with the pain pills. And so I don't know. I'm starting to meander now, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I've got my eye on a couple cannabis stocks for sure.
Interesting. You know what else didn't happen that President Trump told me was going to happen? He said, if the market thinks that Joe Biden is going to be president, your 401k is going to tank and the stock market's going to implode. And not only do I still have electricity, not only do people I know that are eligible still not have a stimulus, not only do I still not have a vaccine, all those things were lies.
But stocks are up, yeah.
But it turns out that Wall Street notched its best performance weekly since April. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ jumped 7.3 and 9% respectively for the week. The Dow was up almost 7% for the week. The S&P posted its biggest election week gain since 1932. You know what was happening in 1932?
War was spreading across the globe, Gerardo.
It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. But again, the market reacted well. We got to get into gold. We talked last week about whether or not the consolidation was over. And man, what a week. Gold closed at 1951. Silver's flirting with 26. It's at 25.57. Copper, 314 a pound. Impressive performance. The juniors today and yesterday, finally, now that there's some clarity, started reacting. And I think the next week or two is going to be a heck of a week after, what seemed like a very long consolidation. It was really only about 5 weeks or so, but percentage wise, a lot of stocks that doubled and tripled and quadrupled pulled back 40 and 50%. And we were overdue for it. We said it was time. But it was good to see the turnaround.
Stocks had a rough end of September, rough October, if you remember. The S&P completed an inverse head and shoulders. The VIX spiked up dramatically. S&P sold off headed into the election and the uncertainty that everyone thought was going to happen, which was actually kind of right. I mean, it's still quote unquote uncertain, although we're starting to get to the end of the tunnel there. I think stocks up was a relatively easy call to make, although a lot of people missed it. I was writing in a weekly recap for Resource Stock Digest that, let's get through this week, but ultimately I think we see a return to the rise in stocks, right? And why is that? It's because the Fed is in control, right? Fight the Fed. That backstop is there. And then you got the fiscal stimulus that's coming. And so the interpretation, I think, is that you're going to get bigger fiscal stimulus with a Democratic administration and perhaps even a Democratic Senate. That 50-50
we have to talk about
split
that.
is coming. Yeah. And so it's narrowing as well. And so, I think stocks up was a relatively easy call to make. And the dollar, which we haven't mentioned yet, it turned itself right around. I mean, it was threatening to go higher, right? That's what was putting pressure on gold, why gold went to that support in the 1860s, why the S&P was selling off, directly inversely correlated there, right? And after the seesaw night of Tuesday into Wednesday, and then when it became more clear that Biden was going to be the favorite, that dollar quickly backed off, right? And then what happened then? Well, the inverse happened. Stocks went up and gold went up. And so I know you were writing about the dollar this week because you're looking for that dollar up, stocks up, gold up, melt up, but it just hasn't materialized that way yet.
And Bitcoin up. Everything's played out.
15,000 Bitcoin for sure.
Got to mention Bitcoin. Everything's played out perfectly with the exception of the dollar up part about it, right? And I think, again, let's look forward a little bit. We know copper's going to catch a bid. There's several large producers that, are dealing with strikes. That's affecting supply. China's stabilizing because they got their end of the virus under control and they're back to an active society, whether you agree with the politics or not. It doesn't matter. GDP is going back up. Employment's going back up. Productivity is going back up out there. And so, copper is going to catch a bid. Mr. Biden has a pretty aggressive plan for clean energy. And again, whether you agree or not with the policy, who cares? Let's make some money off of it, right? And the bottom line is... I think you need
critical elements for that, Gerardo.
Critical elements. and copper and uranium even. I think when it comes to the mining sector and the juniors that I speculate in, I think we're actually in for a better run than many anticipated. Because again, whether or not the Dems take the Senate, we're going to see a situation where there is only way out. There is only one way out moving forward. It's keep interest rates low, give the Fed enough stuff to buy because it clearly has run out of stuff to buy because there hasn't been enough fiscal stimulus. And then let's just get on with, the death of the dollar, which will happen eventually. But again, and I'm going to caution, I know I sound like a broken record, watch for Europe. Watch for, coronavirus cases in this country and over in Europe. Now we have, nationally mandated lockdowns in several of the largest countries in that zone. That's going to affect GDP, productivity. It's going to affect bank balance sheets that were already delicate. And again, it would not surprise me to see a bank blow up or something blow up over there that sends capital over here. And then, gold's going to have to prove its muster with a rising dollar. In the meantime, it seems like, and we say it all the time, every time we think we have it figured out, something changes. But for the next few months, it looks like we're in for a pretty good run in the gold space and the juniors.
I'm not sure if I agree with you or not. All the fundamentals are there. Like you say, every time you think you've got it figured out, something happens, right? And so I reminded you to sell a little bit of stock a couple of weeks ago. I think you brought it up on this podcast. I sold a little bit of gold stock this week, just a tiny bit. Now I immediately bought another gold stock with the proceeds, but I was taking a little bit of gains off the table, right? And I wrote about it as much in my letter. And so I think you still get a lot of volatility. Volatility was the main theme of my letter this week, and not just volatility in the S&P, but volatility across the board. The NASDAQ looks weak. I mean, we had stocks rebound, but I'm not sure the tech stocks are going to do it. And so that could be the fuel for the fire, right? Some of these generalists or quote unquote Robin Hoodies that are now seeing Barrick increase dividends, Agnico Eagle paying dividends, Kinross reinstating dividends. I mean, some of these dividends are getting quite juicy, right? When you're looking at a negative interest rate world. And so I even find myself getting pulled in. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to try to lock in some of this yield. And so, I can totally see a scenario where the next 3 months is very well for the gold sector. I got to caution though a couple of things. One, about the profit taking. Don't be scared to do that. Two, and I think we mentioned this last week or the week before, is we got a lot of financings coming due. So I know not everybody plays in that space, and not everybody is in these juniors. But if you are, look back 3-4 months in the news before you go establishing positions for some key dates to see when the company raised money and when the shares might be coming free trading, et cetera, because I think that's going to create some of the opportunities to harness the upside that we see coming, right? Because let's face it, people sell stock, especially if they're up. And so that doesn't mean that the whole sector is not going to continue higher, but that does mean there could be some selling pressure that allow you to initiate or add to positions that you want.
Let's get to a name that I think is a heck of a trade in speculation right now, and one that's been punished severely, which is why, frankly, we stayed away from it originally, and that's New Placer Dome Gold. They're 40-something holes into Kinsley Mountain. Assays should be due within the next week or two. I've been in touch with the company. The assays I've been promised are starting to come back, but have been delayed because of the labs. It's not anything on their end or a lack of good results. They're not sitting on the results is what I was told. They're eager to put those out. That stock has pulled back over 50% in the last, month and a half, and now has a market cap of approximately 24 million. Now, an overview for those of you not familiar, it owns 80% of Kinsley Mountain, which has, 500, 600,000 ounces of high grade gold in Nevada. However, the drill program will likely consist of a total of 50 holes. You can expect assays between now and the end of February. A lot of high grade has come out of that in the past. If they're able to duplicate anything like what we've seen before, that stock is poised for a run higher. But let's be frank, the pullback happened because people took that initial financing from 4 months ago that just became free trading a few weeks back and absolutely demolished the share price by selling into it and just keeping the half warrant or warrant that was offered when it raised the capital it raised to go drill Kinsley. I say all that to say you may want to peek at that, because if the results are what I hope they are, because of my interest in Nevada Sunrise Gold and you know, it owns 20% of Kinsley Mountain, that's headed higher quickly. We'll see. Another name that you know, Nick and I have been preaching about and talking about and encouraging people to look into is Chakana Copper. Now, I hoped to see results this past week. As the week went on, it made zero sense to do so in an environment where everybody was watching the election. But the more I think about it, the more I think, well, it would be the perfect week if the assays were underwhelming. If results were not up to par, this would be the week to put those results out, right? Get them out of the way when nobody's looking. That didn't happen. So Chakana Copper is another one. And again, anyone that follows us, that speculates in this space, that follows me, I don't know how many alerts I've sent out over the past month, encouraging everyone and sharing with everyone what I've been doing, which is adding to my position aggressively. But that is one to watch out for. I think we got some good news coming from Chakana. Nick, what are you looking at? What are you excited about this coming week here?
You're on a roll. I would have talked about Chakana as well. I raised my buy under on Chakana to 60 cents, and I was buying more probably something like 3 weeks ago as well. I agree that you wouldn't put out good results this week, even if you had them, just because everyone is distracted and not paying attention and might not act on those results. And in that same vein, no pun intended, I think that Revival Gold has probably got some results coming out as well. Revival is also being capped at the $1.10 where it raised money at last, I believe. It's sitting at $1.04, dipped even below $1. And market cap wise, I'd have to make a click here to see what that translates to. But $69 million, right, for 3 million ounces of gold going to 5. And again, I forget where we talk about things sometimes, Gerardo, but I think we talked about the Panther Creek shear zone on this podcast. And so Revival has 3 rigs turning, and I would expect results out soon there as well.
Y'all are getting a lot of free information. You're getting your money's worth today, people. Should we give them one more name, or should we leave it there?
I'm content to leave it there, unless I just reiterate. Let me make one more click. A follow-up from last week would be that your free advice on Eastside paid off. $1.20 to $1.40 is good work from a free podcast.
Agreed. So did the free advice on Magna, which, you know, as it creeped down to the
Correct.
dollar level, here it popped right back up to $1.25. And it's funny, I did an interview with INN last week, and I tried to get cute. I knew the interview would take a couple of days before it was published, and so at the time the stock was trading at 95 cents or 98 cents, and I anticipated it would ramp back up to that $1.25, $1.30 level, but I thought it would happen a day or two sooner than it did. And so when the interview came out, of course, and I love it, because people hold us accountable and it's good. I talked about, Magna being the next Magna and how, yes, we helped finance it at 10 cents, but it's still a heck of a speculation at $1.30. And I used that price point because I thought that's where it would be when the interview was published. Anyhow, it didn't happen. And immediately, like, the fourth comment down says, the Magna price doesn't match with what the gentleman in the interview said. And, I almost opined and commented, but I didn't want to set up a YouTube account and do all that. But it's there now, so I was off by a few days. My apologies, everybody. But anyhow, yeah, a lot of runway there, and lots going on, and it should be a fun end of the year. I think I think there were 2 camps here in the past week or two. There was the camp that thought that the pullback would continue because of tax loss selling season. I didn't agree with that opinion. I thought it was a consolidation and that we were headed higher. And it appears anyway for now that seems to be the case.
Yeah, these gold stocks look healthy, and it's a dead horse when we start talking about support in the 1800s for gold, and that's a very high price, higher than we've seen in years. And again, it's an inning thing, right? It's a cycle thing. The cycle has started. The cycle is going to deepen and develop, and that requires new investors to come in. And I think we're going to be starting to see that here.
Agreed. Did you see the news? Because it's 2020, right? About the Hell Planet.
I've seen a lot of news this week about killing minks and all sorts of other stuff. I haven't seen the Hell Planet.
So there is a planet K2-141b. I'm not making this up. This isn't Elon Musk's kid's name. This is the name of the planet, as scientists have named it, that is hundreds of light years away. The oceans are made of molten lava. The winds reach supersonic speeds, and the rain is made of rocks. Scientists are calling to this bizarre, hellish exoplanet as one of the most extreme ever discovered. It has surface, ocean, and atmosphere all made of rocks. And so I found that to be incredibly interesting in a year that has been, to say the least, incredibly interesting. Temperatures on this planet reach over 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit. It vaporizes the rocks, creating a thin, inhospitable atmosphere, according to the scientists. So, yeah, I found that interesting. There's lots to discover out there, apparently. And of course, we discovered a Hell Planet in 2020, right? We got aliens, Hell Planet, the works. It's
ran out of hurricane names. Yeah, global pandemic. I wonder if there's any vaporized minerals in that thin layer of atmosphere. Sure, we'll make a go at trying to get it at some point.
If not, somebody will do a promo about it. Raise $10 million right now. Nick, what are you looking forward to here outside of the stock market, back to the election here in the next week or two, month or two? Obviously a formal decision and announcement, but the Senate race does have some consequences as far as the checks and balances that Joe Biden and his administration will have. Let me be absolutely clear. I am fortunate enough to be in a tax bracket where I don't want to see my taxes go up to extreme levels. I don't think much of what Mr. Biden has proposed is extreme, but I know it's perceived as that way. And if the Democrats take the Senate and there isn't that check and balance of the right, I can't say holding them accountable because they've blown out the deficit before this pandemic, to be clear. They were on a record pace. But I do believe that having the Republicans in control of the Senate would be a healthy check that would provide for more dialogue. And so that is a risk to the stock market if we want to talk major indices, right? If there's a tax plan that's aggressive, if somebody like Elizabeth Warren comes on as Treasury Secretary, which, she's got an excellent track record as far as holding financial institutions accountable, but, how far do you want to take that in a position that way? Questions that should be asked, right? We got to start asking these things and thinking about these things if we're giving people ideas on how to potentially make $1.
Yeah, I would like a Republican controlled Senate as well. I think the gridlock is the term that's emerging, right? And we like gridlock as investors for the reason you mentioned. A Democrat controlled House and Senate would substantiate the fears that high net worth individuals had. Let's be frank. I mean, the 400,000 income level was being tossed around. And so as far as what's that?
Woe be us. You
still don't want a higher percentage of your income taken away, especially if you're, anyone wouldn't want a higher percentage of their income taken away. But, libertarian leaning folks who have a sour view of income tax definitely are opinionated about that. And it might temper the flow or expediency of nationwide cannabis agenda as well. So might temper the cannabis rise. But, as far as other implications, one thing I was thinking, Trump was very favorable to the mining industry. I mean,
absolutely.
did several things, to help speed up the permitting process. And so I don't see Biden coming in and doing that, especially, and I'm going to take it back to the critical elements, right? Because if he were smart, and the Democrats were smart, they have an opportunity here to position clean energy and some of those initiatives alongside domestic rebuilding and things the others, quote unquote, other side likes, right? Like,
absolutely.
Infrastructure. Mining jobs, exactly, right? And so, anyway, I don't think I answered your question. I honestly don't spend a lot of time thinking about the tax implications of various regimes, right? I mean, by people that I hire to think about those things, right? And so I think more about the direct market implications.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, the bottom line is Trump did a great job for 4 years of promising a lot of things. A healthcare bill. He was going to get rid of Obamacare and provide the best, most beautiful healthcare plan you ever did see. An infrastructure plan, trillions and trillions and billions and all of that stuff. Jobs, shovel-ready jobs. He was going to put people back to work. There were a lot of things that were promised that just, frankly, that's why I started the episode this way. They just never came to be. It was a hustle. It was a shell game. Let me just promise everything to everybody. And it culminated in him simultaneously preaching and urging his base of supporters to simultaneously argue in some parts of the country to count the vote and in others to stop counting the vote. And if that's not coming full circle, I don't know what is, other than what I mentioned earlier, him behind a wall he built with American taxpayer dollars, sitting there tweeting mad at Fox. And the most ironic part of this whole thing, and I'll leave it here, is that I think because Fox was the first news organization to call Arizona for
Sure.
Biden, if Pennsylvania comes in, they have to call it formally for Biden. And it may turn out, and this would be the most 2020 thing ever, that Fox News is the first organization to call it for Joe Biden. Wouldn't that be something?
It would be something. And it's going to happen relatively soon. I mean, I'm sitting here with the page open and you got Georgia's at 99% now. Pennsylvania's at 98%. I mean, the only reason, and I told you this before we started recording, to not make the announcement today or declare it today is to spare the unrest of the weekend, right? Well, everybody's, quote, not working. And so, I think this thing is in the bag as we speak.
I like it. Nick, we talked hell planets, election results, outcomes, things to look out for, a couple of free names to look at this coming week. Bitcoin, which is doing what it, what frankly, you called it. You said it was going to do back when it was 6,000. You said it was headed back much, much higher. I think that was a solid hour of back and forth. What do you think?
You want me to put a lid on it?
I think it's time. I think it's time to go see if this thing's going to get called for Mr. Biden and see what the reaction is. I hope everybody is safe out there. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Libertarian, straight, gay, heterosexual, homosexual, Jerry Falwell Jr., Ted Cruz, whatever it is. Stay safe. Be kind to each other. I'm Gerardo Del Real. This was episode 93 of Bizarro World. Co-host Mr. Nick Hodge, say goodbye for us.
See you, everybody.